Hello, and welcome to an exciting edition of the Romanian Artcast. We are at episode 6, and this edition is going to be in English, if you haven't noticed yet. Today we have a very interesting topic and a very interesting guest as well. We are going to talk about furry art with my friend Christopher Teal. So,
Hello.
Joining us today, all the way from Maryland, the United States, is Christopher Teal. Welcome to the Romanian Artcast.
Hello, thanks for having me.
So, tell us about your background, Chris.
Born in Alabama. Born in Alabama, raised there for about 21 years, went to college there, and then moved up to Pennsylvania, back to Alabama, and now I'm here in Maryland. And that's pretty much it.
Okay. So, why don't you tell us about your education? Do you have an education in art? Any background of the sort?
I would say I have an education in art, but it was a limited education. I have a fine arts associate's degree, which is pretty much a fancy way of saying I'm good at I'm certified in traditional work.
Mm-hmm. How did you get interested in the artistic pursuit?
It's just something that I could always do. It's just something I was always relatively good at. So I originally was going to college to become a nurse because my mom had convinced me that being an artist wasn't a very profitable thing to do.
Okay.
Or a very stable thing to do. But then I realized, wow, I am bored to tears with this nursing stuff. How about this? I do art for a semester, and if I do well, I continue doing the art thing. So, yeah, that wound up happening.
Mm-hmm. Well, how long have you been a furry artist?
Since around 2010, which adds up to about 7 years.
Okay. How long have you been interested in art?
I guess I always kind of have. It started with something that my brother showed my mom. This is when I was around 6 years old. My brother showed my mom this piece of Dragon Ball Z artwork of Gohan. This is a scene when he was freaking out about his dad being killed by Cell. And she was like, wow, that's really cool. And I was like, hey, I want my mom to say something that I did was really cool. So I started down that road, and then I just kept on going because everyone else was like, hey, that stuff you're doing is really cool. It's a sort of ego-feeding feedback loop.
I understand. So you're quite a veteran in the furry art community. 7 years is quite a long time for anybody. How did you first get interested in doing this?
It was something that my first boyfriend actually introduced me to.
Oh,
and
one moment. Let's explain to the good folks that are watching us what the furry community is. What is a furry?
Oh, a furry is somebody who likes anthropomorphic animals. This can be in any kind of medium, like cartoons like Bugs Bunny, or creating their own characters. People who like to
dress up.
Come up. I mean, that can be one thing, but that is a minority of the furry community. Though I do imagine a lot of the furry community does want to dress up. It's just that their fursuits are expensive.
Okay, so now that we know what the furry community is, let's go back to the original question. You said that your boyfriend was the one that introduced you to the furry art community.
Yeah, he was the one who introduced me to the furry community at large. I was already an artist before then. And I was like, this is neat. So I decided, hey, let's explore this new community that I know nothing about. So I made up my character, which was the bare minimum for having a character
Okay.
in the community. And I just continued with it.
What was your character initially?
My character initially was this gray goat-looking dragon, because at the time I wasn't very proficient at making things look like the things that they were supposed to be.
Would you mind standing a bit back because you're yeah, there we go.
Okay.
So you're framed alright. Yeah, so you started with a goat. Let's explain to the good folks what a fursona is.
Okay, a fursona is it's kind of like a personality you play on the internet. You have this. It's your internet alter ego, your mascot. Something that it can be something that represents you. It can be something that represents an ideal version of you. Something you want to be in the future, or something that you are now that you're not happy with, and you use that character to exercise those emotions.
And let's say that a lot of people tend to make their fursona a reality by building a fursuit.
There are some people who do that, and those tend to fall in. I guess those people tend to fall into the ideal version of myself category.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a fursuit?
I do not. They are. I'm broke and they're expensive.
Okay, I'm going to show the people what a fursuit looks like.
Sure.
Okay. So these are the lovely fursuits that people in the furry community make for themselves, and they are pretty large and cumbersome, but people seem to like them a lot, and yeah, they're cute. Let's talk a little bit about conventions.
Sure.
What conventions have you been to? What are furry conventions and stuff like that?
I'm kind of one of those furry exclusive convention goers. I've mostly been to furry conventions. There's Anthrocon, Midwest Fur Fest, Furpocalypse.
How big would you say a convention like this is?
It can be like the ones that I've been to. They can be anywhere from 7,000, which is on the high end, to 600, which is on the which is on the low end. Especially in terms of convention size. I mean, furry conventions are not very big, especially when you compare them to other conventions that I've been to, like MagFest, that wind up with tens of thousands.
Okay. And a lot of people dress up for the conventions. That's what I find really cool about it.
Yeah, it's kind of like cosplaying at an anime convention. Only the character is you, so you cosplay as this person that other people would want to be around. Which isn't to imply that the person behind the suit isn't somebody that someone wouldn't want to be around.
Okay, I'm going to show a picture from Anthrocon right now with all the people that were fursuited, that had their own little suit. And you can see that there's quite a big crowd out there. Okay, now Chris, you are part of the artistic branch of the community. So why don't we see some artwork from yourself?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Let's go ahead and share screens. Okay.
Okay, you are not sharing your screen.
I am not.
No.
Oh, there it is. Okay.
Okay, good.
All right.
So, what's this piece about?
This piece was just was my first attempt at sort of creating this emotional connection between two characters, because before this point I was just drawing mindlessly, putting in details sometimes where they didn't belong, and this was kind of my first attempt to associate art with some sort of emotional connection. the emotional connection, of course, was love between two people and the connection that the two people had, and the sort of this sort of burning desire that I admit that I don't fully understand between two people. So with this one, I just tried to sell the emotion that these two people were in love, and I think I passed relatively well on this one, more so than many of my other ones.
Okay. Let's see another one.
These are just like little traditional sketches. I'll take these to the few parties that wind up happening around here, little furry gatherings, and I'll just take them there and just draw whatever.
Okay. I've seen this character a lot. Does this character represent something special to you?
This character is actually my Sona now. A long way. He's come a long way from the goat dragon.
Okay. It's still a dragon, I suppose, right?
A dragon in name, because everyone's saying, and everyone who knows Tiny is asking exactly how is he a dragon, and I'm like, well, look at the horns, man. He's got horns.
Okay, let's see another one.
Okay. This was actually something that I did for FAU, which is another convention that I've been to. It was actually a convention that the people invited me to be the guest of honor at, which I still regret not tweeting about it more and spreading the convention news, because they are just so nice. The people there are so nice.
Mm-hmm. How long did this one take you?
I'm usually good about timing these. This one I didn't time, but I'd say it took me about 15 to 20 hours.
Oh my, that's a lot.
Yeah, I take a long time. I'm very, very slow with my illustrative work.
Well, it is a complex illustration.
Yeah, and this is actually on the low end of the time taken in terms of illustrations.
Mm-hmm. How was the maximum, let's say? What was the illustration that took you the longest?
45 hours, and that's actually in this demo.
Okay.
Well,
give us a heads up when that shows up.
Yeah.
Okay.
And this is another emotional piece. I tried to sell this sort of cool, calm emotion, and this is something that I'm really exploring more and more with colors and different color schemes, things that will really give that emotional connection that I'm trying to put in all of my pictures now.
Yeah, you know what this reminds me of?
What's that?
Picasso's Blue Period.
Oh, I'm an artist. I should know what blue period is.
Okay.
But I don't. I didn't pay attention in my art history class.
All right. I thought it was an interesting connection. What was the emotion that you wanted to convey with this piece?
It was just this sort of calm, introspective moment that I think all people tend to have.
Melancholy.
And yeah, this was supposed to be. This was a commission, but this person wanted something calm, and it's not something that I typically get commissioned for a lot, because usually people want like something super actiony, or their character being way past cool, or something to that effect. But I don't get commissioned for a lot of quiet moments, and I think it's a beautiful thing that I like to draw more.
Okay. You said you talked a little bit about commissions and conventions. Let's tell the people what an artist does at a convention usually.
Well, artists can honestly do anything, but if they're at a convention to sell their art, they're there for work. So a convention for an artist who is trying to make money is going to be worlds different from an artist who's going to a convention just to have fun. So if you're going there to have money, work the whole time. You don't get a break.
Yeah, cool. Let's see another piece in the meantime.
Yeah.
So how much of your business would you say comes from conventions versus just online?
Uh, I'd gauge it at 20 to 30%,
So
maybe a
30%
little
of
bit
your
less.
business would come from conventions.
In terms of money output, probably closer to 20%.
Okay, so they're not that big of a deal.
Yeah, they're not. They're not. They're very quick money makers.
Got it. Let's talk about this beautiful piece.
Right. This piece is actually the first one that I tried to establish some sort of narrative in the piece to give people some sort of hint of what came before the picture and what's happening during and what might happen afterwards. So this is obviously a room, some decrepit room where things are broken down. They're old. There's dust everywhere, but there's little signs of what happened, what was coming, before this. The title for this picture is "Remnants of the Old World," which is a pretty generic title, but this is pretty much the room of some internet nerd. And this is a guy coming in to collect things like an artifact collector.
So the nerd is gone.
Yeah, the nerd's gone, and the house is broken down. And it didn't really sell that was universally happening. So you probably think this is just one rando house, and there's plenty of other houses that are totally fine with people in them.
Okay.
So I didn't sell that too well, but I do think I sold this was some place that someone lived in, and now they don't.
Well, it's not necessarily that it's hard to take out the details from the picture, but you can definitely take out the sense of storytelling, or at least the mood.
Right, it's supposed to have this almost melancholy feel to it.
A guest asks, do you do pixel art, furry?
Do I do what?
Pixel art.
Pixel art. No. I'm not very good at that.
Well, there's that. Okay. Shall we see the next one?
Sure. This is the start of something that you'll probably see a lot of in my work is a lot of furries are definitely people who play video games. So this is obviously a reference to The Last of Us. This is somebody who wanted to play the main character, and for this piece, I had actually prided myself on the research I did for this work. I actually ruined the entire story of The Last of Us for myself by watching a YouTube series that went through all of the story. And Ellie is such a fun character. But anyway, I was immediately enthralled, and I was able to put a lot more into this piece than I would have had I not done the research.
So it's kind of inspired by The Last of Us, but it's from your own story and imagination, right?
No, actually, you'll find a lot of people who want to have their character also cosplay as another character. So I think I don't recall exactly, but I think this person was wanting to play the main character of that story.
Okay, let's see another one.
Cool. This is actually something that I did just last night. I really wanted to bone up on my expressions again. Excuse me. I really wanted to bone up on my expressions again, so I went to check out.
I don't know, expression sheets.
No, not expression sheets. An artist in particular, Don Bluth. I went to look at his work again, because his every expression in any of his movies is always varied. His characters are never making the same expression twice.
Oh, you know what? Don Bluth did make like one full-fledged furry movie, The Legend of Nymph.
Oh yeah, that's the Secret of Nim. Yeah.
The Secret of Him, yeah. But his other movies, I mean, you can say Thumbelina is a bit of a furry movie, but just a little bit.
Yeah.
So you drew inspiration from those movies?
Not really. I actually just draw inspiration from just the vast number of faces that he drew, and the variety of faces available from he could extract from a single character and still make them look like the same character.
Somebody asks, do you prefer to draw black and white and color after, or do you go directly to color?
It depends on the emotional message that I'm trying to send. Am I trying to sell a melancholy picture? Then yeah, I'll probably start in black and white, where the values are the most important thing, which is pretty much the shading, how well things are lit, and all that kind of stuff. If I'm trying to sell an emotional, picture, I'll start out with color first, and then I'll add in the details to make them to make it more congruous and make it seem more put together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's an interesting answer. Usually people do one or the other. Can we go to the next piece?
Sure.
And since we're on this subject with Don Bluth and inspirational people, why don't you tell us the artists that inspired you the most?
The artist that inspired me the most, usually before my mentorship, with a certain furry artist, Stigmata, who is amazing, does amazing work. In terms of abstraction, they're really good.
Okay. I don't know, classical artists? You said that you weren't the biggest art history fan.
I wasn't the biggest art history fan. And so before my mentorship with Stigmata, I was mostly into other furry artists. You got Dark Jim, and he's Wolfie Nail, and other artists of that persuasion. But after the mentorship, now I have a folder dedicated to the artists that I love to draw inspiration from. Noah Bradley, John Foster, Albert Bierstadt, and really all of the Hudson River School of Art.
Let me just show. Do you want to show them, or should I?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I can show them the artists that I take inspiration from.
Since you said that you have the folder.
Yeah, I do. Give me a second. Let's see.
Now, you mentioned Albert Bierstadt. I've never seen one landscape from you. Why is that guy there?
Albert Bierstadt is there because because originally I did not have much interest in doing landscape, since, it's furry art, so it's mostly focused on the character. I had no real need to put landscapes in my picture.
Right? Yeah.
Right. I had no real need to do backgrounds because the focus was supposed to be on the character. But now I'm thinking, well, hey, there's only so much you can do with just a character and a blank void. So let's figure out backgrounds and see how to do them. So I'll probably never come out with a commissioned work that's just backgrounds. But I'll probably come out with plenty of work that have backgrounds in them.
Got it. Have you found that folder?
Yes, it's let's see, it's right here. So I have.
Make sure you share it on the screen that you are sharing the other piece right now.
Right. Okay. So this one is right here. Okay, there we go.
There we go.
This one is Carl Brender's, who I use for I have different folders dedicated to different artists, and I do appreciate. I love Carl Brender's work mostly because of the detail they put in their animals. I find it fascinatingly detailed.
So let's just say for the audience that these are paintings, right?
Right. These are paintings, not photos.
And the artist is
Carl Brenders.
Carl Brenders.
And the first person who got my old mentor said, hey, there's this Noah Bradley guy. So I went to look up Noah Bradley. I saw one of his YouTube videos telling all about his inspirations, and something that my mentor told me is if you want to learn how to, if you really like an artist,
Copy them.
Copy their inspirations, not their work specifically. Because if you copy their work specifically, you will only be as good as a knockoff version of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Basically, it's a watered down expression of their mentors, their heroes.
Yeah, and I didn't want to be a knockoff anything. I wanted to be an original version of me, which is the advice I give any artist in the community or any artist who's just starting out.
That's great. So what are we seeing right now?
This guy is Johannes Holm. I'm probably butchering his name.
Okay.
And I like this guy because he combined two facets of art that I really love: imagination and medieval armor, and also animals. So I guess you could say three. But he managed to create like this entire world just with the characters, and I always found that pretty fascinating about his work. How he managed to use characters to create a world like that. The middle squirrel standing on a nut, and the big squirrel having this twig for the handle of a mace, and I don't know what the ball is made of. I guess it looks like iron. It's the concept of it being made of iron is sold to me.
Okay.
Which makes sense because they're in iron armor and all that stuff. Which makes you think there's this sort of society of squirrel people.
Mm-hmm.
And I always found that pretty fascinating about his work. Let's see. Looking at this. Next.
Okay.
And he would do all sorts of stuff like this, fighting medieval wars, epic battles between animals, which typically we find to be things that don't do this, don't do this kind of thing.
Cool. You know what? I'll put all the artists that you mentioned in the description of this video. Why don't you show us one or two pieces by Noah Bradley, and then we'll go back to your work.
Sure. Let's see. I think I put him in background or landscape. Yeah, landscape. Noah Bradley. Okay, this guy I mostly appreciate his lighting work. He does a lot of work for Wizards of the Coast, which if you don't know are people who do the Magic of the Gathering card set. So the reason I like Noah Bradley's work is mostly because of his lighting and his ability to imply shape with just minimal effort. Like if you zoom out, you'll see, oh, it's a castle, and all of these, and you can't see the individual brushwork. But if you zoom in, you're like, oh, he used a really quick square brush for these kinds of for this stuff right here, to just imply shape immediately. So he didn't have to do much of the work. He let your imagination do most of it, and I found that really attractive. It's something I've been trying to incorporate in my own style.
I see. Okay. Yeah. He sure is a good artist, and he said himself that he prefers doing backgrounds, landscapes. And that's something that I've been missing in my work a lot of the time, is doing backgrounds and landscapes. Well, you know what? I know your work, and we'll see in the future that this lighting effect tends to crop up in some of your works as well. Mm-hmm. This dramatic light. Yeah, and yeah.
Noah Bradley's probably the biggest influence of my work, especially his like vibrant colors and.
There you go. Okay, so what's the story behind this one?
This one's sort of like one of my melodramatic pieces. This is actually another one of my characters, very creatively called. I just very creatively call him Deer Man. And this is a melodramatic piece. And I used it to sort of. It's sort of a lament of how people never really understand each other. So I used hands on the outside and Deer Man is inside this bubble. And the picture is titled Just the Friction of Atoms, implying that when people touch each other, it's not them actually connecting with each other. It's just the friction and the rejection of the atoms of like their hand or wherever they're touching,
That's interesting.
pushing against each other.
You know, most artists, when they draw something, they just draw it because they think it's cool. Like, I just want to draw a cool elf with big boobs. But you seem to have a story behind most of your illustrations.
That's actually very recent. That wasn't always the case.
Okay.
There are certainly pictures that I drew just to, like, I do get that occasional urge. Let me close this. To draw, just draw cool stuff.
Okay.
Next one.
Yes.
This one was another commission, and this certainly falls into the draw cool stuff category.
Okay.
People who play Magic the Gathering will recognize the armor that this character is wearing, and this is another one of those. This is a furry character cosplaying as another character that already exists. I think it's called Ajane Greymane, and it's supposed to be a lion, sort of lion character who's in this armor.
Wait, so there's an actual lion character in Magic the Gathering?
Yes, they actually do have occasional anthropomorphic characters. Usually they fall in the typical category like gnolls, which are anthropomorphic hyenas, or werewolves, which are anthropomorphic wolves, and stuff like that.
Cool. Well, this one seems to be much more complex than anything you've shown us thus far. Do you have any special commentary on this piece?
Not in particular. This piece was it was another commission, and it was. I wouldn't say it was my first attempt to do super detailed work, because every single one of my pieces was attempting to do super detailed work. I just wasn't there skill level wise, and I think this is probably around my first attempt. I wouldn't say it is my first, but it's around my first time to try and solidify myself as this guy who could put in all this detailed work.
Oh, it's beautiful. And have you gotten inspiration from Noah Bradley for this piece?
Not in particular. I didn't use a lot of reference except for the main character for this piece. This Balrog looking guy.
Yep.
Didn't have much inspiration. I just made him up.
Okay, cool. Well, I like the way you rendered the magma, the lava that's in that character. It seems pretty good.
Thank you.
Shall we go to the next one?
Yes. This one is actually fairly recent. This person just wanted a commission of themselves doing some cool stuff. So I was like, okay, let's have him soaring through the clouds and have those clouds come into the foreground, and also he's a time wizard who can manipulate time and space.
How do you think about composition?
Composition for me is, at this point, it's more intuitive than it is something that I actively think about. I say, if it looks right, it is right.
Okay. Would you say the same thing about color?
Color is something that I do need to think a little bit more about, but it also falls relatively into that category.
That's great. Well, a lot of your works seem to have to do with flight, especially your other ones. Is there something in particular that attracts you about this?
About light?
The flight.
Oh, flight. Not in particular. It's to be honest, I hate drawing wings.
Haha. And there you go. You have a lot of characters with wings, but you still hate drawing them.
It's mostly because it's just a whole bunch of blank space that I have to try and make look interesting. Because wings don't have a lot of detail in them like muscles do,
Okay.
or a face does. So I'm left with all this dead space that I have to come up with ways to make it look interesting, and I am not really good at coming up with things on the fly. Pardon the pun.
Okay. Shall we go to the next one?
Sure. Another flight picture. This one is actually interesting from a different perspective. All the feathers that you see on this character are spawned from one of 3 different drawings of a feather. So I pretty much copy pasted and then transformed it.
Well, I gotta say, this is one of your pieces that I really like. So why don't we talk a little bit more about this piece?
Sure. This again, this was a commission. The person wanted themselves flying, and I decided, hey, I'm gonna put a little bit more into this, which is something that I do try to do a little bit more often because I try to be a person pleaser as much as possible.
Yeah, and the background is definitely much more mature than your other works.
Right. It was one of those times where I said, hey, I want to put detail into here, and I actually had the skill to include that level of detail to some extent. I still need a little bit of work with those mountains and stuff in the background, but the clouds are sold really well. That this person is soaring through clouds, and it doesn't just look, because painting is definitely a 2D thing, and you do have to think about how best to sell what is happening. Otherwise, it just looks like this person is in the clouds, which is just painted over water.
Yeah, and also
mountains.
the clouds give us a sense of height, because it's also in a 2D medium. It's quite difficult to see how high the character is flying.
Right, and that's one of those things you always have to think about, is how well am I selling the idea that this person is doing what I say they're doing in the picture.
Tell us a little bit about how you choose color.
I think about what the emotion of the picture is, and what colors would best go with that. So color psychology is definitely a thing. Like red is a very active color, yellow is a very loud color, blue is a very calming and passive color, and I also have to think about the color interactions. So I think, okay, blue going with orange is a very contrasty color. Do I want to make this a complementary color scheme, or do I want to make this a harmonic color scheme? Because there is a difference. A complementary color scheme is blue and orange and them contrasting against each other. But a harmonic color scheme is using blue and orange and having enough grays in the middle, in between those two colors, to make it seem really, really harmonic, like the picture itself is very real and grounded.
Let's talk about this one. What color scheme did you use, and why?
I wanted to make this a really warm and inviting picture, so I used a lot of warm and inviting colors. And then I also contrasted that with the blues of the sea, but that was more of a brainless decision on my end.
Yeah, regarding what you said earlier, there's definitely a lot of grays in the picture. Why did you choose to go with this kind of scheme?
I guess I chose to go with. I can't recall the reason exactly, but I guess I chose to go with. I chose to go with this kind of color scheme because I wanted. At the time I figured, okay, I wanted it to seem active but also warm and inviting. So I made the major color, the major color this really pastel kind of orange and warm color.
And then you put a lot of grays for blues, I suppose.
And then I used a lot of grays and then a lot of blues in the picture to have it contrasting to make it seem a little bit more lively and active.
Let's tell the people at home when is a good time for you, personally, to use a complementary color scheme, and when is a good time to use a harmonious color scheme.
A complementary color scheme, I would say, is best whenever you're creating. Like if you've seen the covers if you've seen the covers of almost any movie, they use this blue and orange color scheme, and that's to be eye-catching and active and activate the brain. Because to go into a little bit of color theory, a complementary color scheme is two colors that are on the opposite end of the color wheel. Because these two colors tend to vibrate really well against each other and really pop against each other. But yes, a complementary color scheme is something that I would want to use if I wanted to catch someone's eye, if the picture was designed to catch someone's eye and really keep the eye in the canvas. A harmonious color scheme is something that I would use whenever I want to sell a more subtle emotion, like some quiet moment, or sell the realness of a moment in a painting. And this can be anything this can be using any color scheme, really. An analogous color scheme, monochromatic, anything like that.
So for anything more mellow that doesn't require as much contrast.
Right. Yeah.
Cool.
So,
shall we go to the next one?
Yeah. Alright, this is one that I think you were really interested in. And this is one where instead of using different, like 3 different feathers, all of these feathers that you see on the character are all the same feather, just copy pasted. And this is the first one I did this experiment with. It was actually after seeing somebody at Anthrocon do this with one of theirs, and I was like, okay, I want to see if I can do this with mine. And I'll admit, I was scared at first that I wouldn't be able to sell it, but then I did a little bit of a paint over to add in those occlusion shadows, and it wound up working out.
Definitely did. The first thing that I notice when I look at this picture is not that it's not the feathers, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So where did you take the inspiration for this one?
This one actually was mostly Noah Bradley with his use of clouds to denote the focal point in a. Well, honestly, I just like the way Noah Bradley painted clouds. So I was like, hey, I want to paint clouds with that range of color. So I used that, and I thought, hey, this character's mostly blue. I can use an orange light as a background for his head to make a complementary color scheme and make it seem really actiony and alive, and the colors pop.
Well, you know what? This one really reminds me of Renaissance paintings.
Renaissance? Yeah, that would probably be my. That would probably be as a result of my desire to emulate really old dead people. Because I do love really old painters, not necessarily Renaissance, but old dead painters like John Singer Sargent and
Raphael, Michelangelo.
Honestly, now that I think about it, I don't really take much inspiration from Renaissance painters.
Now that I mentioned one or two of them.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, this one definitely looks like something out of The Last Judgment, if The Last Judgment happened with furries. What's the story behind this one?
There's not much of a story. This was actually before I tried putting an emotion into it. Any kind of like emotional. This was before I tried to have any sort of emotional connection with my artwork. So in terms of story, it's not. There isn't much of a story. This person sees a thing, wants to kill the thing, so he has a spear. What for to kill the thing with? And that's basically the extent.
It's beautiful. Was this a
Well,
commission?
Yes. Most of what you'll see here are actually commissions.
Cool. What was the brief, if I may ask, that led you to this result?
I cannot remember what the person said. So, what prompted me to do this? Most of my work will wind up being something where I try to test myself in some capacity. So, what the person said, I will follow those guidelines, but can sometimes be irrelevant to things that I include in the picture, which, for the most part, actually winds up working out.
Alright. Shall we go to the next one?
Yeah. This is actually a Dark Souls inspired piece. Since it's with dogs, you could call it Bark Souls.
Okay.
And there's not much to say about this piece. This is Dark Souls 3 inspired. They're at the kiln of the first flame, and they're deciding whether to continue the Age of Fire or let the world go into an Age of Darkness. And that's basically the story.
There was a question. How many hours did the last picture take you? The one with the wings?
I think that was one of the first ones where I spent 20 to 25 hours on a picture, which I thought was a lot at the time. But then I got to the 45-hour picture one and I was like, you know what, 25 hours? Not so bad. But yeah, that one took me around 25 hours.
Okay, let's go back to this one.
Okay, this one actually took me a little bit longer. This one was around 30 hours, and that's mostly because of all the details and little chinks and dents and stuff you see in the armor and the texture of the fabric. I tried to make it look realistic, and I don't know how well I passed on that one for.
You know what? The armor does look realistic, but it seems like you spent more time on the armor and the clothes than you did on the faces.
Yeah, that is certainly a fair assessment to make.
Okay. So I haven't played Dark Souls. You have to explain a little bit of the lore of what's happening here.
Oh my god, this could be a video in and of itself. For those who aren't satisfied with a quick synopsis, go watch Vadi Vidya's videos, because a lot of the lore of Dark Souls is shrouded in vagueness. They're intentionally vague to have people talk about it, which is a concept I'm trying to include in my work, so people talk about my work more.
Let's talk a little bit about this.
Right.
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 So you said that you were writing something.
I said that I was what?
You said that you are writing your own novel, graphic novel.
Trying to. I tried to write my own graphic novel until I realized, hey, wait, I don't know anything about writing. So I was like, and this is really my biggest failure. If I don't know something about something, I study it, and then I'll never start doing it. Because I'm like, okay, well, studying this led me to 3 other problems that arise, and studying these 3 other things led me to 9 other things that I have to study.
Well,
and
this is an interesting line of conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Who have you studied to learn how to write effectively?
I don't study any particular individual's work. I usually just, and I honestly haven't done a lot of studying for writing in particular, but learning to write and creating a narrative structure, I usually just talk to my writing friends, and they say, "Oh yeah, you have to think about this term that you're probably not familiar with, or this other term that you're probably not familiar with." And I'm like, "Okay, so what's that?" And I have them explain it to me, and I'm like, "Oh, okay." And they usually wind up being concepts that I didn't think about before, which aren't that hard to grasp. It's just things you have to keep in mind, and they're not things that I've had enough experience with in order to keep them in mind automatically. So I wind up having to write them down, and come back to them whenever I have some sort of story idea.
Cool.
So yeah.
Do you want to talk a little bit about what you are writing, what your idea is?
To be honest, it's just some sort of emotion in my head. It's like, well, I want to do this, but I'm not exactly sure what to write about.
Mm-hmm.
So it has to be something I have an emotional connection with first, and then come up with a story with later.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's an interesting theme in all your works.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Was this the first time that you did armor?
No, actually. The first time that I tried an armor of any sort was back at that, well, I don't know if we've gotten into it yet. That military picture that I don't think we've gotten to yet.
No, we talked about the Ellie one, The Last of Us, but that wasn't exactly armor.
Yeah, it wasn't armor, but it was weapons and stuff like that.
Okay, let's go to the next one and we'll reach that one as well.
Right. Alright, this is another piece. This is probably my second piece of work where I tried to create some sort of narrative, quality. And you'll see there's this sort of castle structure in the background, and this person has all this armor on, and looks like they have a portal on their hand, and little notes that can possibly fit through the portal that could go back to the castle. Which I tried to create a narrative through a line using color. So you'll see the orange and yellows and reds on his gauntlet, and you'll see some oranges and reds in the background right above the castle.
Were you earlier in your background work when you did this one?
What do you mean? What was I earlier? What?
In doing backgrounds.
Oh, no. This is probably one of my first few background pieces, and sad to say, it shows.
Yeah. That's what I was saying. If you compare this one with the one with the wings, the flying one, it kind of shows. But this just shows how much you have improved.
Yeah, this is actually one of my older pieces, and yeah, it shows.
But it's cool. I mean, I like this one as well. It certainly has a sense of I don't know, scale. Like there's this really big dude.
Yeah, because he takes up most of the canvas, as he should, because it's a character piece.
And he's almost as big as the mountains.
Yeah.
Okay, shall we go next?
Yeah. This is actually one of my later pieces. You could call it the spiritual successor to the last piece. This is one where I knew a little bit more about backgrounds and how to draw things in the backgrounds. Knew a little bit more about rocks and how to add those subtle grays and blues and all that kind of stuff to them. And this is just one of those pictures that I really like, because it's one of those ones where I tried to put in story and a little bit of my own personality, like having a rubber duck in a medieval setting.
Haha. Well, it's definitely a beautiful piece. Now, maybe a lot of people are asking themselves, or if not, I'm asking the question for them. Why was an artist that is talented as you working as a furry artist? What made you choose this career path?
That is honestly a question that I used to get a lot whenever I did sometimes post to different avenues. And these are like small time avenues. They were like, why do you limit yourself to just furry artwork? And I have to say I'm someone who's addicted to the comfort zone that is the furry community, because the furry community is definitely a comfort zone. And
in what sense exactly?
Well, the furry community themselves are very accepting, and they're very they're a pretty open-minded community. And whatever ideas you present to the furry community, you'll definitely find at least 10 or 12 people who are like, hey, yeah, I can get into that.
Well, let's also say that a lot of furry artists aren't. I mean, let's say that the furry community doesn't get the cream of the crop of artists. So when they get someone like you, oh, you definitely stand out, right?
I suppose I do, but there definitely are other artists who dwarf my work in terms of skill. You have Ona, and there's this oh god, I can't remember his name.
Yeah, we're gonna have to put those in the description.
Yeah.
Afterwards.
Absolutely.
Okay, so was this? Yeah, I suppose this was a commission as well. And what did they exactly ask for?
Just their character bathing in a hot spring.
With a rubber duck.
No, the rubber duck was me. And they didn't appreciate it. So I gave them the version without it. But then that inspired a whole bunch of other artists to draw this character with a rubber duck, and I inevitably solidified that character as having a rubber duck sidekick for the rest of his artistic life.
That is awesome. I love that story. Okay, can we go to the next one?
Yeah, sure. This is the one where I really did where I really dug the armor that I did, and this one wound up being if it's not Kyle's for me to mention the price tag, this is the one that wound up being around $100 to $150, I think. And this is the one where I actually kept my time somewhere around the price somewhere around what was legitimately viable for the price tag. So my prices are based on hours spent on the picture. So since this one wound up being 100 to 150, I wound up spending 5 to 7. I was supposed to spend 5 to 7 hours, and I wound up spending around 10 hours, which is much better than any of my previous pieces.
So you charge by the hour, pretty much.
Yes.
So
I charge by the hour with a little bit of wiggle room for whenever the quality isn't exactly where I want it to be.
Okay, so your customers don't know beforehand how much it is going to cost them. They only have a ballpark idea.
No, actually, I asked them, okay, so how much are you wanting to spend on this piece? And they give me a price tag. They say no more than X. And I'll say, okay, that'll get you around X hours of work on this piece. And they'll say, okay, that's good, or well, no, that's kind of bad. I don't normally get people who say, no, that's kind of bad, because I am at a point where the quality of my work is roughly uniform.
That's interesting.
So they will know around what kind of product they're getting, because I actually have a commission sheet that'll tell them, hey, 2 hours get you this, 4 hours get you this, 8 hours get you this, 20 plus hours get you this.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me ask you this. Has it ever happened to you, because it definitely has happened to me, that you spend like an hour doing a leg or a hand, and then you're not satisfied with it and just erase it and start over?
Not any body part in particular, because before I get to working on a piece on my Cintiq, I want to make sure it's sold to me while zoomed out. So I'll have this little thing up in the upper right corner of Photoshop called the Navigator, which will allow me to see the whole picture zoomed out to see if I'm selling the picture from far away. Because if I'm selling it from far away, people are going to want to look at it from just the thumbnail. So before I get to work on it on my Cintiq, I work on it on my tablet. But are there pictures that I start and I want to start over because I'm not really sold on the idea? Absolutely. That happens all the time.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's interesting. I was just thinking with the way you work and you charge your clients, that the way I work, it wouldn't be lucrative, neither for me nor for them, to do it like that, because I'll just draw the same thing over and over again until I get it right.
Yeah. That, and the the work that I do, with the work that I do eventually have to come to an agreement with myself that, hey, this work that you're providing your customers is certainly of good quality, and I sort of have to convince myself sometimes, because I do sort of have to convince myself sometimes that my work is good, because I'm not the biggest fan of my work.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well.
But yeah.
I suppose you got confidence with time, right?
Yeah, I do develop confidence with time, and confidence is something that you do need, and being comfortable doing the thing that you're doing is key in terms of painting. Yeah.
Yeah, something that you said earlier can really be seen easily in this piece, which is the color psychology, and the fact that he chose dominant red to show the fervor of battle, let's say.
Mm-hmm. It's a super active color.
Yep.
And the contrasting of the blue in the background, and atmospheric, and the really intense, almost completely unrealistic atmospheric distortion of the dragon in the background. Yeah, I tried to sell the idea that this was a land being conquered, and
there's blood that's been spilled.
Not necessarily blood that's been spilled, but just a new land for all these characters, because you'll see they're all lizard
people
kind of characters.
Yeah,
they're all lizard people. So this is I think what I titled this one is we claim this land in the name of Scalies, which is the lizard version of a furry.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Those are some temporary lizard people. Let's go to the next one.
Sure. This is the military picture one. This is my first attempt at armor, and this was something that I had to ask one of my military savvy friends how to make something look super tactical, but also accurate for the for what he was doing.
So what did you learn from this military friend?
I didn't learn much that stuck with me for a long time, but I learned how to. I learned the different kind of equipment that they would keep around, what they would have on their little holsters. Ooh, excuse me. Where they would keep their sidearms, whether they were right-handed or left-handed. Comm systems that they would have, GPS, and all these kinds of equipment. All this kind of equipment that they would keep on their body.
You know what? I was actually commissioned to draw some weapons for somebody at one point, and right. I had to learn about all these kind of weapons. It's really cool. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it's. I find that's when I enjoy a picture most, is when I'm learning something new, and I think it'll eventually show in my quality. I think it'll inevitably show in the quality of my work whenever I'm learning the most with a picture.
Okay.
All right. This is another recent one, and this person. This is one of the people that I decided, hey, I'm going to talk to this person while I do this commission, to sort of capture the emotion that they were going for. And this character is someone that they represent as their ideal self, someone who doesn't falter in the face of adversity or overwhelming odds. And that's kind of the reason I chose this angle, a really low upward shot, to denote that, to sort of show that everything in the picture is bigger than this character, but this character is not someone who falters, and he has this sort of heroic presence about him.
Did you use a grid?
Did I use a grid?
Like a perspective grid, to do a 3-point perspective.
Oh, not really. I just looked at pictures of cameras pointed upward at trees and just sort of eyeballed it from there.
Somebody is asking you if you use textures.
If I use textures, yes, actually, that's something that I've been getting back into recently. I for this one, I didn't. For this one, it's all brushwork. But now I'm going back and saying, okay, I want to sell realism now. Let's go on to CG textures and download some textures for myself. So nowadays I will go and download textures, and once I'm at around this part of the painting, I'll start adding in textures as an overlay layer and then working them into the piece.
Somebody is asking you if you prefer Photoshop or Clip Studio Paint.
I have no idea. I've never used Clip Studio Paint, so I have no idea how to use it.
Oh.
So I am 100% a Photoshop nerd.
Oh, I'm committed to asking all the questions that come up. So.
Yeah, dude. I appreciate it.
Okay. Let's see the next one.
And this.
Yeah.
This one.
I love this one.
Yeah. This one was probably my favorite one to work on because it's just such a goofy idea. And believe it or not, this was a commission. Somebody wanted me to recreate the creation of Adam, but with red pandas, otters, and Magikarps. So I did. And this originally started out as just a sketch. The person only wanted me to spend like $100 of time on it. So I did, and then I was like, you know what? Okay, let's create this again, let's work on this some more. Make sure the colors are more accurate. Make sure the characters in there are more detailed, and let's add a little bit of more personality, which is why you see the one Magikarp in there.
Yeah, the Magikarp are definitely the most detailed things in the whole picture. What's the idea of an otter creating a red panda?
Honestly, it was just lol random humor, a lol random humor moment. If any of you watch the Nostalgia Critic, it'd be the painting equivalent of a big lift alligator moment. It was just complete.
Yeah, I know that one. It's an obscure reference though.
Oh wow, we're getting obscure. I get to keep my hipster cred. But yeah, this one, it was just supposed to be lol random humor. But still, it was probably my favorite to work on because it was just so ridiculous. Also, it has red pandas in it, which are obviously the best animal that exists.
Yes, they are definitely very cute.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go to the next one.
This one, this is the one that took 45 hours.
Yeah, the one with the selfie stick.
Oh, okay. You are actually not the first person to say that.
You've never thought of that though? It's so obvious to me though.
It wasn't that's something that I have to get away from the picture from. It's something that I wouldn't be able to see while I'm in the midst of the picture. It's like a forest. It's like I can't see the forest for the trees, and it's like, oh, zooming back, it's the sword as a selfie stick. Well then, I hate this picture at least 10% more.
Well, listen, to be fair, it's an amazing picture with textures and colors and the composition and all that.
Yeah, I do love this picture, mostly for the level of detail that I put into it. Oh god, this one took forever.
What's that monster supposed to represent?
This is another Dark Souls picture, actually.
Okay.
And this is the fight between the Lothric twins. Because you'll see there's actually two characters there.
Yep.
One that's leaning over the character that's swinging the gigantic flaming sword.
Okay. So you really seem to like Dark Souls, or maybe your fans are pretty big fans of this.
They know that I do like Dark Souls, and people who watch me know that I like Dark Souls, and they just put two and two together and say, "Hey, this person is really good at drawing Dark Souls artwork. I think I'm going to splurge on him and spend a little bit of money getting myself a Dark Souls piece because I am also a fan of Dark Souls, and that I think that's beautiful."
Let me ask you this: did you begin this piece with a shifted horizon line?
Honestly. Yes, I did want it to seem like an unbalanced picture, but ironically, it wound up looking so balanced because of now that I'm looking at it again, it looks so balanced because now all the characters are like, if you look at all the characters, their line at the it creates almost a straight line at the top where their form ends.
I mean, that's a usual trick, let's say. Like people in movies, for example, put all the candles at the same height as the eyes of the character to draw attention to that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I get what you're saying. You could have made it a bit more diagonal, more active,
Yeah.
let's say.
I could have made it a little bit more of an unbalanced picture, but I unfortunately did not.
Still a good picture.
Yeah, I still like it. It's still probably one of my favorites that I've done. Whenever I wake up in the morning, I'm like, well,
At least I did this one.
At least I did this picture at one point in my life.
Okay, let's see another one.
All right, and this is the last one. This is me trying to get into writing and storytelling. Funnily enough, I kind of made this. I didn't make it up as I went along. I sort of drew off of like personal experience. This is because it's called "How Did I Get Here?" and it's a story of how I came to become the person and artist that I am today. So yeah.
Cool. Well, we'll be waiting for the full color version of this charming story.
Oh yeah, me too.
Whenever you'll be ready. Okay.
I'll try and be ready soon.
Okay, so you said that this was the last one, right?
Yeah, it is the last one that I had prepared.
Okay, let's go back to the webcam and
Sure.
do the interview part. Now, where do you think furries came from?
Okay, stop sharing screens. All right, can you see me?
Yes?
Okay, cool. Where do I think furries came from?
The neck of the woods.
Yeah, I just assumed that it's a fandom that's always kind of existed, but didn't really have like a communication medium that would really allow for it to exist. I think that furries were something that didn't really get popular until the internet became a thing, and everyone said, "Oh wow!" People like once the power of anonymity was around, and you didn't have to really risk your career off of saying, "Hey, I actually like two-legged creatures," or two-legged animal creatures, and
well, there have been furry IPs, let's say, for a very long time. If we think about Robin Hood by Disney, that was definitely a furry movie.
Yeah, which is and there are definitely people who were drawn to the furry community from those kind of movies. You got movies like Zootopia, Robin Hood, and even more obscure movies that people tend to like Summer Wars and Bear and
Summer Wars?
Yeah, Summer Wars. It had this one anthropomorphic rabbit character.
I remember that one, but I would have never linked that to the furry community.
Oh yeah, the furry community loves that. Well, I can't speak for the entire furry community.
You love that.
I love the movie, and I hear that a lot of people in the furry community also love the movie.
Mm-hmm. Okay. We talked a little bit about conventions. How would you describe the furry community? What do they have in common?
Generous. I would say they're generous. They're very accepting, and again, I would say they're a very fun comfort zone. For me in particular, they're a very fun comfort zone, where I can.
You can express yourself. You can earn some money.
Yeah, it's a place where I don't mind sharing certain thoughts that I wouldn't be able to share in the real world, so to speak.
Do you think there are any worst aspects of this community?
I do think that, and the furry community will probably jump on me for saying this. It does have an addiction to drama problem, and this is usually just people who start a fuss, and this is a vast minority of the furry community, but it is still a problem, and that there are people tend to overreact to sometimes benign and sometimes serious situations.
Would you mind giving an example?
I couldn't give an example without outing anybody, so I'm probably going to have to refrain from doing that.
Now, an interesting aspect of the furry community is that around 50%, if not more of it, are gay. You yourself... There was a poll recently, and well, not recently. There was a poll a long time ago, and it exposed that most of the furry community is actually straight. Wow, you wouldn't think that.
Absolutely not. But it's mostly I guess the gay portion of the furry community is just the most vocal.
Well, let's just say that gay people are more represented in the furry community than in the general population. And why do you think that is?
Mostly because, again, for the furry community is a comfort zone. It's some place that people can go to express themselves in ways that they can't in the real world. And for some people, there is still some stigma on being gay. I guess now it's sort of like that stigma has sort of risen again, what with the current political climate in America again. But I guess there is still some sort of a stigma on people who are gay, and the furry community is a very attractive place to come and say, hey, I'm gay and I don't want to be ashamed about it anymore.
Sure, I mean, if anything, the furry community is not judging at all.
Yeah, it's certainly not a judgmental place.
Good. Now, why do you think there are so many American furries as opposed to other places?
I honestly don't know. I mean, it is weird from a logical standpoint. I mean, the furry community is very accepting of gays, which is not something America is entirely known for. But I mean, yeah.
Okay.
That's politics, and I try to stay away from that. And I honestly don't know why America has so many conventions.
Yeah, we were talking before the show that we only have one convention in the whole of Europe. Well, as far as I researched, the Eurofurence, which is a big one, but the Americans have one almost every month.
Sorry?
We were talking before the show about the Eurofurence, which is the only one as far as I know in Europe. But the Americans seem to have one furry convention every month.
Yeah. I actually looked up a map of all the furry conventions, and
yep,
there's a lot of them. There's more than one a month in America. There's like, I don't know, I don't know the exact number, but like 25 or 30 in America.
Yeah.
And I guess that all chalks up to.
Well, you know what?
I wouldn't know.
This is my theory. Americans usually live at the house, and they are huge pet lovers. Like most Americans have a dog or a cat or something like that. And this is not the case in Europe. Most people in Europe have two small apartments to own a pet. You know? And the biggest dog lovers I've met were American. That's
something that I really didn't have any knowledge of, because I'm a sheltered American.
you know that the urbanization process in Europe and America are super different. Like, we live in crowded spaces, and you guys have the suburbs and all that. Now,
Okay.
you've been around the furry community for, you said, 7 years. How do you think that this community has changed during this time, if any?
I wouldn't say it's changed all that much. It's still an accepting community. I would just say that it's grown a lot. It has a lot of mainstream appeal now. You'll see a lot of movies that are like catering to the furry community. Like Zootopia, that was exclusively catering to the furry. That was really catering to the furry community, almost to a shameless degree.
That is true.
Because, the people who made the Zootopia movie were saying, "Hey, furries, take pictures of your fursuits whenever you go to the movie theaters to see the movie." And these are the people who made the Zootopia movie. So I'd say it's kind of cool that it's getting a sort of mainstream appeal now. But, mainstream appeal and all the negative things that go with it. So...
Oh, you know what? Disney has always been known for being extremely open-minded to these sorts of things, and not to mention that they have been the main source of furry movies for quite a long time.
Yeah, but then Illumination came along with Sing, and that movie was just so good.
I haven't seen that one.
I have opinions on it.
Okay, do you believe that the furry community has grown or shrinked in the past years? I mean, recently. We know that it had a big period of growth.
Yeah, I do think it is growing, and I think it will continue to grow. I couldn't possibly tell you how much it would grow because I'm not a data analyst, so I don't know. I don't know the pattern or the paradigms.
Sure.
But I do know the conventions are steadily getting bigger. There's actually this competition between AC and MFF to see which conventions can be the biggest conventions. And MFF is actually set to pass up AC this year. So we'll see. But I do believe the furry community is growing and will continue to grow.
Okay. Now let's talk about your favorite furry movie.
I don't honestly have a favorite furry movie. I'm a really bad example of what a furry is. Because I don't really engage a lot in the furry culture. I mean, I am a furry, and I do primarily talk to furries. So I guess in that regard, it'd be pretty ignorant to say I don't engage in the culture that much. But I don't have like a favorite furry movie, mostly because I'm not a movie person.
What about the series or a book?
Nah.
Oh, let's say Lackadaisy is a given.
Well, yes, but that's unfair.
Why? It's 100% furry.
I know. I'm making a joke. Yeah, Lackadaisy, I would say, is probably the main furry literature that I read, but it's not. I don't like it because it's furry. I like it because it's clever, because of the time period it's set in, and
let's tell
just
people
all the
about
expressions.
Lackadaisy, by the way.
Oh, okay. Lackadaisy is this series that is set in the Prohibition era. So you have all these secret pubs that sell alcohol illegally, and they're all just cats.
Yep.
They're just cats. You don't know why.
I'm going to show a picture so people know what we're talking about.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, and yeah, please talk about the thing more.
Yeah, Lackadaisy is just follows the adventures of this one pub called the Lackadaisy. And just all the exploits they get into, and it doesn't sound interesting from the offset, but it certainly does have artists look at it for the expressions, and everyone else will wind up enjoying it for the story and the comic and the interesting characters and the design. The beautiful artwork. Oh my god, I have never seen a comic that looks as good as Lackadaisy does.
Yep. Let's just mention, if anybody doesn't know, that alcohol was illegal in the United States between the years. You tell me the years.
I think it was somewhere around.
After the First World
I don't
War?
know. I think it was before then, but I think it was early 1900s is the best I can say. I'm not very good at my own history.
Okay.
But yeah, it's set in the early 1900s. And Prohibition was basically the banning of alcohol. So.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's where the mafia started. Actually, they did moonshine, like illegal alcohol. They smuggled alcohol into the country. I have a question. Do you prefer Over the Hedge or Ice Age?
Do I prefer Over the Hedge or Ice Age? Over the Hedge was kind of a boring picture emotionally for me. Ice Age, the original, is like the only one I've seen. The first one, that is the only Ice Age I've seen, so I guess I would say neither. But yeah, I'm pretentious, so and also I'm not a movie person.
Why not?
I guess I just don't get much. I don't find much inspiration in very many movies because I find a lot of them, most of them, to be too Hollywood. If I guess I was going to give an answer, they're too structured. They have a set formula that they go by, and it seems like most of them just go by the numbers.
You know what? It works. Like the 3-act formula of Hollywood really works.
Oh, the 3-act formula I'm fine with. It's just all of them seem to follow the exact same story beats, and it just gets boring to me after a while. That's
good. Now, what are your plans for the future?
My plans for the future are make my own comic, and live off the dividends.
Okay.
No. My plans for the future. I do love illustrating, and I always want to be illustrating. And that's really all I have planned for the future. I just want to be an illustrator. Not necessarily working for anybody, because, like I said, the games industry doesn't really call to me anymore.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that. When I met Chris, he was trying to transition from the furry community to working into the games industry. And as time passed, he gave up on that idea. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Mostly it was because of my perception of the games industry. Like, it chewed up artists and spat out games. And, like, my perception at the time was, whenever you were finally working in-house on a video game, you were with the production company for the whole time. But then I realized, oh no, wait, it's basically like being on commission. Or working freelance, being on commission, which is an in-house free is the exact opposite of freelance. So that terminology. Yeah. So I thought, okay, I get a gaming job and I work in-house for the rest of my life. But no, that's not at all how it works. You work on one project and then you're done.
Yep.
And honestly, there's not much to be done for a game in terms of illustration. I mean, you have the concept art phase, but then after that's done, what else are you gonna do?
That is true. That's why I interviewed, and I'm trying to learn it myself, a little bit of 3D.
Yeah, I did. There was like a month where I taught myself Blender.
Yeah, you can get Maya for free.
Yeah. Oh, wait, what?
Yeah, you can get a 3-year license if you register as a student. So you just say that you went to this college and you'll finish in 2020, and they give you a license without verifying it.
Oh, but that'd be lying for me.
Yep, for everybody watching at home, get yourself a Maya license. Okay, so you said that you don't want to work in the games industry and that you want to be an illustrator in the future. If you were to have a dream job, as far as you know, what would that dream job be?
Pretty much what I'm doing right now, working for myself.
Okay, if you were to
And
work
just,
for somebody else, who would you want to work for?
I don't know. I've gotten so used to the idea of working for myself that I can't accurately imagine what it would be like to work for somebody else because I'd be on someone else's time and I'd be working on a project that someone else created and pretty much gave birth to. So I couldn't accurately answer that question.
Freelance for life. Okay, now we're nearing the end of the interview. If there is a question that you would like to ask me.
Yeah, I'm actually interested to hear why exactly you decided to interview someone from the furry community. That's not something that I typically see people do in their art casts, their art podcasts.
Well, I know, and that is kind of why I wanted. I wanted to
Okay.
interview you. I thought about the Romanian Artcast as an artcast that interviews interesting people that do something artistic, not
Right.
necessarily artists. So I have scheduled somebody that is a stand-up comedian, a female stand-up comedian.
Cool.
Yeah. In the future, I want to talk to actors. I want to talk to musicians, not necessarily just to artists. And you are part of a unique aspect of the art community, which is this furry community. Which is,
Well, thank you very much for choosing to interview me.
of course. Now, if somebody were to go into the furry art business, let's say, what advice would you give to them?
Do what you want first and let people come to you. Because in the furry community, there will inevitably be a large group of people who like what you do. So do what you want first and then let people come to you, and then you will only get commissioned for that thing that you like to do.
And if you were to do it again, if you were to be a high school student again, what would you do differently?
I would do that advice that I just gave. Because
So,
I didn't.
You didn't.
I did things that were popular in the community, and eventually I just lost interest.
Okay, can you give an example? Quick.
Uh, Again, I couldn't give an example that wouldn't out somebody. So
Okay. So, your advice for the people that are watching are to do something that you like and not something that is popular and stick to it.
yes,
Good. Okay, well, this is the end of this interview. I want to thank everybody that watched. I want to thank Chris for being so kind as to participate in this interview with me. You can check out the description for useful links for us. You can check out Chris's links, my links, follow us. Also, make sure to subscribe so that you get alerts for the next Romanian Artcasts. And we'll see you next week with a new edition of the Romanian Artcast.
all right,
Bye!
bye bye.